Hi, folks. Thank you for joining us again for Food for Thought. This is Sunil Chandy, Father Chandy from Christ Episcopal Church. And so far, we have about 3 people on board who's watching us. And so we thank you for being with us. And don't forget to say hello right now. I think it's a good thing to do. Namaste. Betsy, how are you? Namaste. I hope and everyone else is doing well. I'm trying to turn this thing off. Good afternoon, Natalie. How are you doing? Thank you for joining us again. And so today we have really two wonderful guests that's doing a really wonderful and exciting thing. And I'll introduce them a little bit later in about 8 to 10 minutes. And until then, I did want to just reach out and talk to you guys about all the wonderful things that were happening. I'm a little flustered this morning. I just went shopping this morning, and of course, when you're going shopping, it's not the way you used to go shopping before, where you just get into a car, you get to the place where you want to go, and you get a cart and you go in and you start shopping. No, it's kind of a different ordeal this time, and it's a little bit calls for us to be a little bit sacrificial in nature, because we're kind of doing things in a new way. And so, of course, before going shopping, I had to have my list together. I had to have my face mask and my gloves, and I went into Walmart, and then I did my shopping, and then in the midst of it, I noticed most people had their masks on, and most people had their gloves on and masks on. But then there were a few people who didn't, and so it's hard to come and deal with new restrictions now in this COVID-19 world. Hi, Roger. Good afternoon to you. But there were some people who didn't have the masks on, and they were doing their shopping. And I was speaking to the cashier, and there was a great deal of anger. People were angry, or the cashier was angry that when I was checking out, that the person in front of me didn't have a mask on, and he was very animated about this. And so I started to think about this. I mean, this is a new reality for many of us. I know it's a new reality for me. I expected to go in and get out of the shopping in about an hour, maybe even 45 minutes to an hour. I kind of allocated that much time and said, I'll be back here. I'll be able to do the stuff that I need to get done. But it took longer. And then, of course, there's waiting, being 6 feet apart from people. All of that added to the extra time and frustration. And then to see also people without the mask, it can be a kind of frustrating type of situation that we're in terms of even some of the most common things that we want to do. But the question is, how do we react in those situations? Hi, Marcia. Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us. How do we react in a way that reminds ourselves and holds up as a model for other people that we're Christ followers? I remember, several years back, I was going, when I lived in South Jersey, there's a place called Wawa. It's kind of like a 7-Eleven. It's a Cumbies type of experience for us in New England now. But Wawa in New Jersey, is the place where you go get some coffee. You want to get a quick, convenience store type of sandwich, or if you want to go get your gas, this is the place to go. And they have the greatest mac and cheese, by the way. My kids still love it, and every time I'm heading off to New Jersey, they want me to bring some back. Can you believe that? Well, one day, hi, Steve. Good to have you with us. One day, I went into Cumbies or Wawa's, and there was a long line going into Wawa's. The coffee is amazing there, right? And as I was waiting, with my car, I was behind like a smaller car, a yellow little Volkswagen, and he was behind this huge truck, 18-wheeler or something. And the truck made a wrong turn or something, and he couldn't get out as quickly as possible. And so this little Volvo was like getting really upset. And it's interesting because he had those bumper stickers, and he said like this: "I love Jesus. I love Jesus. I'm a Christian." It said something to that effect. Honk if you love Jesus, that type of thing, And he had this on his bumper sticker. The truck driver made a mess, made an error or something, and we were all kind of stuck there for about 20 minutes, and we were all rushing, trying to get our coffees and come out. And this little yellow Volkswagen was honking his horn, and then finally, the truck driver saying, "Listen, I'm sorry, can't do anything about it." This guy, the guy in the Volkswagen, came out, and he was angry. Not a very big guy, but he was angry. He was very angry. And so what happened was this: he comes out and he goes right to the truck, and he goes like this. And he starts cursing his head off then, cursing off his head, and he says, all this stuff. And then meanwhile, the truck driver comes up, and this guy is huge. I mean, he is kind of like Dwayne Johnson huge. I mean, he is like 6'4", and he's big and he's burly, and I just was watching this, and I'm saying, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" So what happens? Nothing. The guy in the Volkswagen said, "Okay, all right, I'm sorry. I'll just head back into my car." And he got back into the car, and we all waited patiently, and the truck driver just left. But again, when I saw this yellow car leave, all I could see was, Jesus loves you. I bring that story up because I think I was kind of upset, not so much at the truck driver, but maybe even I was upset at the Volkswagen driver, because it was a man who claimed to be Christian and wasn't kind. And maybe, maybe I should even be upset at myself. I think we Christians are always called to reflect, think deeply about how we present ourselves to the world, and what we think about situations. Are we the type of people that will let our emotions dictate how we will act, or are we the type of people that will follow Jesus to a brave new world of hope? My hope is that we are the latter. So in spite of all the frustrations that we might have, the challenging moments that we're having in the midst of this crisis, the moments in which we don't expect, that cause great inconvenience for us and maybe even some sacrifice, let us not forget who Jesus calls us to be. People of love, kind, gentle, good people of love. Anyway, today we have two wonderful young people, young adults, and they're already very well accomplished. We welcome Ivy Swinsky and Morayo Akande. I call her Mo. That's where she goes. That's what she goes by. She's a wonderful lady, and I think you're going to enjoy both of these ladies. But they're host and music producer of Time Theology, a podcast sponsored by the Episcopal Diocese of Rhode Island, whose goal is to create space to have real and meaningful conversations about faith. I met them because they invited me to do one of their Time Theology podcasts, and it was just a great experience for me. And they'll talk about this project, but I'll tell you, they have interviewed wonderful priests and clergy people of our diocese. So Ivy is a graduate of Marymount College, Manhattan College, with a degree in theater arts with concentrations in writing for the stage and costume design. And since graduating, she's been lucky enough to work around the country on various productions. And she's moved back to Rhode Island over a little under a year ago. And she works now for the Cranston Health Equity Zone, focusing on community engagement. And she's a lifelong Episcopalian, and she's excited to help create and develop Times Theology. Morayo Akande, who goes by the name Mo, has a master's in public health and conducts HIV research in African countries. Currently, she works as a project coordinator at Brown School of Public Health and oversees multiple studies in South Africa that focused on prevention, treatment, and behavior change regarding HIV, sexual violence, gender equality, substance abuse, and mental health, with a particular focus in adolescents. Mo has lived in Providence for 8 years and has been deeply connected to her community throughout that time. I am just so privileged to have them both here. Dave, would you please bring them up? Hi, folks.
Hi.
Hey.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Mo, I am so sorry. I butchered your name. People have a hard time with my name, and I should know better. But
that's okay. You got there eventually.
I'm just so glad that you're so patient and kind. And Ivy, thank you for being with us. I enjoyed my experience with both of you. It was just really wonderful to spend some time talking with you. And so you have this new project. Tell us about this.
So this started in October. I emailed the bishop saying that I wanted to do some sort of event focused on young adults. And the two of us had a meeting, and we sort of came together with this sort of idea to do a podcast. And from that, it sort of spiraled into what it is today in a really wonderful and organic way. Specifically, we were looking at how fandom culture on the internet works. I personally love going on Twitter and following a hashtag over a TV show or something like that. Mm-hmm. And we want to sort of replicate that kind of community in a faith-centered way.
Wow. So let me ask you a quick question. Fandom, what does actually fandom mean? I mean, you're going to have to unpack some of this.
No, absolutely. So fandom culture is, it's sort of like Comic-Con and that kind of world where there's a TV show or a movie that a community of people really like and enjoy. And specifically on the internet, that's where you'll see it in fan fiction, fan art, as well as Reddit threads and sort of Twitter hashtags about those shows. If you ever go onto Twitter and you see that The Bachelor is trending, well, you click on that, you'll see everyone's opinions about the show.
Does the Episcopal Church have a fandom culture?
Not really. I mean, you probably could.
Okay.
I'm part of the Episcopalians on Facebook group. So I mean, you could, in a theoretical sense, make that argument, I guess.
I think we should do it.
Yes.
Good. We should have a comic book. Nick Knightley. Something like that. We should do something.
Definitely.
So Mo, how did you get into the project? How did you guys meet with each other and get connected to this thing?
Yeah, so Ivy had reached out to a group that I'm a part of through Grace Episcopal Church. It's called the 20s, 30s small group, where it's more like 20s, 30s plus. Anyone's welcome. And we meet and we just kind of have a very casual approach to faith, in that we all kind of share where we are on our faith journey, and all those things are really different. And so Ivy had heard about this group because we're getting bigger and bigger, and we have members that aren't even members of our church kind of show up and have that kind of conversation. So Ivy had reached out to us asking if anyone was interested in partnering to get this podcast going. And I was just like, yes, I would love to do that. So that's how we met. And then we had a chat at Seven Stars one day and kind of talked about the planning. And then I offered, with my music background, I offered to take over the music production.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. And so in terms of Jason just joined us, by the way. We're learning how to do all of this stuff myself. But in terms of, so both of you are young adults in the Episcopal Church, which is really pretty interesting for me. What is it? I mean, I know that Ivy's a lifelong Episcopalian. Mo, have you recently come into the Episcopal Church, and what draws you here? And what is it that both of you see in it that's powerful, that you want to do something to proclaim it and do evangelism through it?
Yeah, so I am a cradle Episcopalian.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I am. I grew up in a one-room schoolhouse that was converted to an Episcopal church in a town of about 7,000 people in Southern Illinois. So, yeah, I guess what has always drawn me to the Episcopal Church since I could kind of consciously make that choice, for me personally, has been the music. The hymnal that we have, I think, is the greatest compilation of music of all time. And then on top of that, I think the very loving and welcoming culture of the Episcopal Church has always been super appealing to me. And that's what's kept me a part of the church for most of my life. I had a time in college where I kind of stopped going to church and felt that hole grow as I spent longer and longer time away from the church. So after I graduated and was trying to figure out what my next steps were and how to be an adult, I realized that I wanted to cultivate my spirituality and my faith. And so I walked into an Episcopal church one day, and that was Grace Episcopal Church downtown. And I've been there for almost 3 years now.
Wow.
It's pretty cool.
Beautiful. Excellent. And you, Ivy?
Yeah, so I am a cradle Episcopalian, and my mom is ordained, so we've got 2 layers on there. And my story is actually really similar to Mo, where I went to college and I went to some random churches very loosely. I wasn't really involved in any of them. And coming back home, I sort of have figured out where I want my spirituality to land. So I now go to St. Barnabas in Warwick, which is really exciting. And it just felt like the right fit at the time. I also have to agree with Mo that I personally love our hymnal. As a Royal School of Church music kid growing up, I also really appreciate our hymnal and all the music sort of way that the Episcopal Church is.
It's interesting because, I don't know. I think that's parallels maybe the kind of the journey of many of us. I mean, it parallels my journey. I was in the Church of South India earlier on, but then when I got to college, I left the Episcopal Church or the church, the Anglican Church, actually. Church of South India is in the Anglican Church. And then I came back to it, and the liturgy was very important to me, but the Episcopal, the hymnal, was I enjoy it right now. I find listening to the lyrics, hearing the music, it soothes me. It makes me think deep about issues of faith that have. And these are people who've lived hundreds of years ago who wrote these lyrics, and to find that. But I also found that I needed some contemporary music when I was younger to kind of connect me to an experience of faith. But now I found this is really pretty interesting. You guys really enjoy that sense of history and heritage, I guess, in the Episcopal Church through the hymnal. Right? Am I saying that right, or?
Yeah, okay, I can go.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I think that part resonates with me, but I guess as someone who doesn't know a lot of the history or liturgy parts of the church, I mean, there are definitely parts that I enjoy and I love learning more about those things. But for me, it's just something about, like you said, the lyrics and the beautiful melodies and basically how the music sounds that speaks to me. And, from being a cradle Episcopalian, I've been singing in my church since I was like 7. And so singing and praising God, they are synonymous to me. And
Yeah.
so I think there's something about the hymnal and that being the way that I identify with how to praise the Lord, is, I think, more a better description of how I feel about the music and why it draws me so much to the church.
Wow. Beautiful. And that resonates with you too, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think it as the same sort of way I've been singing in a church choir since I was in 3rd grade. So it is sort of that like comfort food feel where I know the hymns. I can go into any Episcopal church in any state and know a majority of the hymns that we're going to sing on a Sunday. And I really appreciate that continuity. It's the same thing that I really like our Book of Common Prayer. I can walk into any church on a Sunday and know basically what a service is going to look like. And I think that there's something very comforting about that sort of style of worship that just really works for me. And I was in New York. There are so many different ways to worship. And I went to other types of services and I appreciated parts of what they did. But I do love the continuity of the Episcopal Church, that we are rooted in this tradition, but then we do let you sort of go off and do different things. Like we'll sponsor a podcast, for instance, or we can do a 5 o'clock service that does like different type of music, but we're always rooted in that type of tradition.
And, and it's interesting that, part of what we do here is we started this Food for Thought program in response to, this COVID-19 crisis thing. And people seem to like this idea of connecting with the church in some way and finding some kind of, I don't know what it is, but we're enjoying a good deal of success. And maybe it's partly because of what you're saying. There's this comfort level. There's a comfort in knowing that the church is present in the midst of this crisis. You all say, like, I mean, it's beautiful. Like what you're saying is when you go into a church anywhere in the country, especially in an Episcopal church, you find a sense of something that's common, something that's rooted in a tradition that you understand and are familiar with, right?
Yeah, and
that's interesting. That's beautiful. It's like you find strength in that.
Yeah,
definitely. And I also think too, as people seek out more faith during this time, I think part of it is that church itself, just the idea of church, is people coming together. And whether you have a history of going to churches or not, I think people imagine church as a lot of people coming together to worship and kind of share a common practice and a common goal. And so it makes sense to me that people are starting to seek more of that out, because as we're all isolated in our own homes, we are craving that connection and that togetherness. And I think that's something that the Episcopal Church can provide. And especially just all these churches in the Diocese of Rhode Island. I mean, like you said, you started this Food for Thought thing, and it's so cool. People can just kind of log on and connect and say good afternoon and have a conversation or listen to a conversation that's, thriving and it's interesting, and it has to do with us, building each other up. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, Mo, I think that there are many churches within the Episcopal Church that are doing this type of thing. They're being creative in the present moment, and that's a really good segue to talk about, Time Theology. I mean, what your podcast is doing is really, in the midst of this crisis, which you probably didn't even plan for this crisis. I know that when we were, I remember this was like right after my interview came with you guys, right after we were deciding not to do any more services on Sunday. And I came to you kind of like almost in a flustered state. I was trying, and on top of my mind was COVID-19. But you guys had been planning this out for a long time. So, tell us a little bit about this project.
Yeah. So Tea Time Theology, as we've kind of already said, is a podcast sponsored by the Episcopal Diocese of Rhode Island. This first season, as we're calling it, because we're hoping to be able to continue and have more than one season. The theme is unintentionally welcoming, and how welcoming the church is to various people. And also just how welcome do you feel by religion and God in general. We span a wide variety of topics. The ones that have already dropped are about love in the church, everyday God, evangelism, deacons. Today's episode that dropped is about women in the Bible and in religion with actually our Canon to the Ordinary, Canon Dina. As well as we have topics on queering the church and what does that mean, and that's coming a little later down, as well as Anglicanism. What does it mean to be Episcopal versus Anglican, and how do they exist together? So we're very excited about the various topics that we get to talk about with all of these really amazing clergy. I ran into the bishop because I was getting something from Liz, and I was like, you have some really cool people who are in this diocese, and I hope you know how cool they all are, because it's been really exciting for me, because I didn't know well all of the people that we had on the podcast as well. So it's been very exciting to see what's happening around the diocese and who are these people.
Yeah, and it's great because when I get to see our clergy together, it's during our clergy meetings and everything, and it's great to hang out with, just to have a conversation with, and just to kind of, it's kind of like have a cup of coffee with what I imagine is you listen to a podcast. It's kind of like almost having a cup of coffee with these folks and talk as they talk to you about their thoughts about life and faith and their particular issues. It's beautiful. I think it's great. It's super. I mean, and Mo, how do you create the music for these particular people? How do you know that what type of music would work and not?
Well, I think right off the bat, Ivy and I were like, we have to just come from the hymnal. Like, we are both obsessed with this hymnal. We want a chance to continue to listen to the music in it. So that part was easy, deciding that we wanted all the music to come from the hymnal. And then as far as choosing the hymns for each episode, Ivy had fleshed out kind of these ideas of what each episode would be about. And so based on those ideas, I kind of maybe had 3 to 5 possible hymns that could work. But what was really helpful was listening to the interviews, being present for them, or for the ones that I wasn't present for, listening to them so that I could choose a hymn that really kind of coincided with the theme and the conversation. And then as far as recording, it's just me and 2 friends of mine who are my neighbors that are also musicians and singers. We just we banged it all out in one day. We recorded at Bell Street Chapel in the West End, and it's a Unitarian church, but they're also super welcoming, so they were cool. And we just I kind of went through and I had a vision for each hymn, also based on the theme, how I wanted the hymn to be represented. So whether it's in unison, whether there are 2-part harmonies, 3-part harmonies, what we do with tempo and the words, what verses do we choose? It was all thought out, pretty detailed. So, and I'm happy with how it came out.
And yeah, I think it's. I haven't actually seen my episode either, but I also remember that you also have. There's a third wheel to you guys. You have Taylor also. Taylor
Yes.
could be within. And could you tell us what his function would be in all this?
Yes. So Taylor goes to St. Lucy's Greenwich, and he is the magician behind anything tech that has to do with this. So he's the one who records all the episodes. He edits them. He put in Mo's music to make sure it all flowed correctly, and he's the one who upload it to all of the platforms we're on and make sure they drop at the right date. He's like the logistics guy that just makes sure everything actually works the way it should.
Well, it was great coming to this apartment, and you had a microphone, you had the headphones, you had this conversation going. It was just beautiful. Well done. Really enjoyed it. And so we have an event coming up on Thursday. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So when Mo and I met the first time, Mo is brilliant and was talking about ways to engage people beyond just having them listen to the podcast and any sort of online communication we have. And she had this idea of doing some sort of listening party. The original concept was that we would have the first 5 clergy whose episodes have dropped, give them all a table in some church somewhere, and people would be able to come and table hop and talk to everyone about their podcasts, or if a question came up that they wanted to talk about, they can also do that. We are now living in COVID world, so doing that plan doesn't exist anymore because we can't gather together. So we worked with Kristen, who is the communications director at the diocese, and sort of came up with this idea to do a Zoom live listening party. The way that it's going to work is that we are asking that people fill out a Google form for us, just because we want to make sure everyone who gets the Zoom link actually wants to be there. And we will be doing 2 breakout rooms. One room will be with the Canon Megan Kelly and the Reverend Scott Lee. They'll be in one room. And then the other room will be you, Sunil, with the Venerable Jan Granella, who is the Archdeacon of the diocese. The 2 of you are together. And we want it to be a space where people can just ask any questions that they had. And I put in the description for the Facebook event that it can be anything from asking some deep theological question to what show are you binge watching to get through this social distancing. We just really wanted it to be a space where you can talk to clergy and in an approachable way.
And that event is happening on May 14th at 7 p.m.?
Yes, it is. If you have any questions about it, you can go to our Facebook page, Times Theology, and there is an event there, or you can also email me and I can help you out in that way at teatime@episcopalri.org is our official email as well.
Well, you know what we'll do is we'll put it on our Facebook page, and also, we could put a link to it or something. Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely. I would love that.
And then we'll also do it on our website too, because then we have some other platforms that it could go out. And so, and basically, when they do come in, they have to fill out a form, right? You said?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's important when you go to the Facebook page for the event, instead of just saying that you're going, we also ask that you fill out a registration form, just because It's likely to be a large Zoom call, and we're going to have breakout sessions. So if we have your information beforehand, we'll be able to plan that, and then we'll also kind of avoid any Zoom hacking, since that seems to be a trend.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing is also when you're this is also going to be recorded. So if you aren't able to, I hope it is, right? I guess it will be recorded, right?
I think we're gonna try to. We're still ironing out some details.
Okay. If you can, that would be great, because just in case some people can't see it, they'll be able to kind of, be able to access it later, and come back to it and maybe, ask some further questions. Is there a place where these podcasts are on that we could even access that?
Yes, there are. So on the Facebook and Instagram and Twitter page, we do have a link tree that shows you all of them. If you don't want to do that, it is on the podcast app on all iPhones. It is at the Podbean, as well as the Google Chrome podcast app and iHeartRadio as well.
Sounds good. Sounds really good. I'm so glad I'm grateful that I met you guys. It's just wonderful. And I'm hoping that, maybe after this listening party, we could come back and each of you have interesting bios, right? I love to kind of, Mo, I love, you were in East Africa. I used to live in East Africa. I love some of the work that you're doing. And Ivy, with all of the drama and the drama in your background in terms of the theater, there's some really wonderful things that I think we could talk about if you ever, I'll invite you to come back on with us. And so this is mostly my parishioners, and then it's grown to be a larger community. We have between 2,000 to 3,000 views now, at least on a daily basis, and it's growing as we continue to do this thing. And so we have interesting guests like you. That's why it's growing. So, but we want to thank you for being with us today. And so, namaste. This is how in India we say namaste, and which really means namaste. It means the God in me greets the God in you. The holy in me greets the holy in you. And we say also that when we leave, and that means God bless you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
And I'll see you on Thursday.
Yes.
All right. Thanks. Folks, again, just two examples of wonderful Episcopalians, young adults who are faithful and have a light about them, and they're spreading that light. And that's exactly what we're called to do in the midst of the challenges of life, especially in this challenge, which represents one challenge that in the midst of a life filled with challenges and joy, as Christians, we pass on the light, helping all people to learn that they could deal with the challenges of the day. So let's say this prayer that we say at the end of this session together. It's a prayer written by Thomas Brown for the COVID-19 situation. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Jesus Christ, you traveled through towns and villages, curing every disease and illness. At your command, the sick were made well. Come to our aid now in the midst of the global spread of the coronavirus. Heal those who are sick with the virus. May they regain their strength and health through quality medical care. Heal us from our fear, which prevents nations from working together and neighbors from helping one another. Be present with those in authority who are making hard decisions. Support the medical professionals, emergency responders, and teachers and students and clergy and our caregivers. We ask this all in your name, Jesus. Amen. Join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Friends, Go and spread the light of God to the world. The world needs it right now. Thank you.